Ladies and gentlemen, on this uncharacteristically sunny afternoon in The Hague, I'd like to introduce you to to welcome you to this Secure Societies event, which is held under the auspices of the HagueTalks, where we try to get creative minds to come together and share perspectives and ideas on how we can create a more open, secure, peaceful, just society. This is a Secure Societies event. We'll have a lineup of great speakers who will come up and give their own perspectives on the issue that many of you have been dealing with this week in The Hague. The HagueTalks works in collaboration with a lot of different organizations here in the Netherlands, and today we could not have hosted this event at a more auspicious and relevant location than the Hague Security Delta campus, which is the headquarters of the Dutch security cluster that works on ensuring cooperation between industry, knowledge organizations, government, business, to create a more secure cyberspace. I would now like to introduce you guys just a quick break, a special message from someone who would have loved to be here, but unfortunately is still on a flight on his way to the Netherlands. He did, however, take a moment to record a special message for us that we can take a moment to have a look at. Ladies and gentlemen, Vint Cerf.
Hello, my name is Vint Cerf. I'm the co-inventor of the internet. And I really appreciate the chance to chat with you before we actually get together in The Hague in mid-April. The good thing about the internet is everything is connected. The bad thing about the internet is everything is connected. And in the midst of all the wonderful freedom of expression that the internet gives us, freedom of access to information, that same freedom also creates risks because there are some people who wish to harm others by means of the internet. And the problem, of course, is that the victim could be in one country and the perpetrator in another. And so we now need to deal with global, international kinds of incidents that create harms in the internet environment. So this is a sort of a two-edged sword. It's general purpose technology. People can abuse it, and they do. And we can't ignore that. So one of the challenges we have before us in the course of our discussion is how to protect all of our freedom of expression and assembly and access to information while also freeing us from harm or protecting us from harm, and doing so in a way that doesn't completely destroy the human rights that we enjoy on the network today. So I'd like to suggest to you a couple of things. First of all, maintaining the internet in this global interoperable state so that it is useful no matter where we are in the world is vitally important for its utility. People have invented new applications in a very permissionless way. They don't have to get permission from every ISP in the world. We need to maintain that characteristic. But at the same time, we have to figure out how to do this in a way that preserves human rights and safety in this online environment. So let me pose a little challenge for you. Let's imagine it's the year 2025 and you're looking backwards to the year 2015 and you are thinking, okay, what is it that we did in 2015 or proposed to do that has produced the desired result? An open, interoperable internet where people have all of their rights preserved and at the same time are protected from harm. What is it that we did? You have 140 characters to tweet that to hashtag HagueTalks, HagueTalks. And the winner of that tweet and I will get together, I hope, later in the week to have a cup of coffee and discuss their ideas. So I look forward to seeing you in The Hague in a couple of weeks' time. In the meantime, I hope I'll see you on the net.
Yeah, a warm round of applause for Vint. He unfortunately couldn't be here. Now, I don't know about you, but I would really love to have a coffee with one of the guys that created the internet. So if you want this to happen, tweet what Vint just asked of you. Imagine it's 2025. How can we ensure an open, secure internet? What do we do now? So tweet to hashtag HagueTalks, at HagueTalks. You can also, during the course of this event, this is particularly for those of you that couldn't join us here, that are watching the event that is being live streamed on www.HagueTalks.com. You can also ask your questions of the speakers and interact with us as the event proceeds. So at HagueTalks, #HagueTalks. If you haven't followed us, follow us now. I'd now like to introduce our first speaker. We're talking about the internet, and as Vint already pointed out, the main question is, one of the questions is, how do we ensure peace and security? Our next speaker is somebody who's been working in this for quite a long time. He has been an analyst for MI5 after he studied at university. He has worked as the British liaison to Europol. He himself currently leads a team of 800 people almost, plus or minus, that provide support to the law enforcement agencies of the 28 member states in the European Union. He's at the forefront of this battle, this war, to ensure a safe and secure internet, safe and secure cyberspace. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd love for you to give a warm round of applause to the Director of Europol, Rob Wainwright.
Thank you, Sean. So I'm sure you'll remember last year, Jennifer Lawrence and some other celebrities were hacked. Nude photos of them were posted online. How many of you took a sneaky look and went to one of these websites to have a look at a naked Jennifer Lawrence? I've got 3 hands up. Brave souls, thank you for admitting that. I suspect the number is greater than that. You're not going to tell me that today, and that's the very point I'm trying to make, not to embarrass you. Illustrate the point that actually, when we go online, when we wear that veil of anonymity that the internet allows us, we can go to places and do things without other people noticing. We wouldn't dream, presumably, of lurking outside Jennifer Lawrence's house and peering into a bathroom to see her getting changed. Online, our attitudes and behavior change. Most of the time, that's fine. Most of the time, that's a terrific freedom that we all enjoy on the internet, something to celebrate. After all, the right to a private life is something that's cherished very much within our societies. But of course, Jennifer Lawrence is entitled to her privacy as well. So where there's an upside, there's a downside as well. And I think that characterizes one of the essential elements of the internet, this dichotomy of value. The internet gives us enormous freedoms, but at the same time serves as a means by which it can abuse our privacy, and certainly a means by which it can damage our safety and security. I'm familiar in my life with both sides, the good and the bad of the internet. With my family, I enjoy the freedoms. When I come to work at Europol, I see a side of the internet that is darker and worse perhaps than most people can see. It has become now the principal instrument of organized crime and terrorist activity. You'll know, of course, that the greatest part of the infrastructure of the internet is below the surface of what most people see and use every day. And as part of that deep web, there is the darknet. This darknet area is host to a very high number and a great range of hidden services and marketplaces on places like the Tornet that trade in drugs, firearms, fake IDs, any other kind of illicit commodities that you can imagine, at a fantastic rate that is growing really, really quickly. Most of that is illegal. An academic study last year of the Tornet found that over 50% of these marketplaces were devoted to criminal purpose alone, and that there were 2.5 million daily users of the Tornet. That's a lot of criminality going on under our noses, generally undetected. Police might tell you here in the Netherlands, elsewhere in Europe, the drugs problem is declining. Fewer seizures, fewer arrests. Actually, it's moving online. Today's equivalent of that shady character who used to lurk on the street corner to push his drugs is someone in the comfort of his own home doing that at a much greater industrial scale, selling any type of illicit drug at any quantity almost, with almost a zero risk of being caught. And things are not much better above the surface. Forget the darknet, even in the area of the internet that we all use. Banks, for example, are under considerable attacks right now from very, very sophisticated cyber criminals using malware to penetrate the deeper reaches of their information security and to perpetrate the kind of financial losses that we wouldn't have even imagined a few years ago. The latest operation involving Europol found that a months-long, very carefully coordinated attack to penetrate global banks in that case, to take control of the system administrators' rights, to take control of the banking payment systems, even the ATM network, global losses, almost $1 billion, again from somebody in the comfort of his bedroom, probably somewhere in Ukraine or Russia. And don't let me start talking about child sexual abuse, because that horrible trade has been absolutely transformed by what's possible on the dark and in other parts of the internet. So why is this happening? It's because criminals are smart people in the main, some dumb ones as well, I'm glad to say, but people who are exploiting the terrific technological innovations that are part of everyday life of how the internet is growing. There is now a virtual underground criminal economy, a very large one, crime as a service business model that's supplying to cybercrime gangs almost 1 million different variants of malware every year to steal people's data, to defraud them, and to carry out a whole range of cybercrime attacks that are now becoming increasingly difficult to manage. But also, they're wearing that veil of anonymity themselves, of course, and using that to hide their identity. More than that, they're using the high-grade encryption has become a part of the modern internet to prevent themselves from being detected, and doing it very, very well indeed. So we should ban encryption, right? No, of course not. Of course we shouldn't ban encryption. Encryption is a regular part of the way in which the internet works. E-commerce would collapse without it. I don't even think the Tornet should be banned, quite frankly, because it offers a wonderful avenue for dissidents in certain countries, for example, to communicate in a safe way. As a police chief, even I recognize that, and I say that, but I also say let's have a better balance between security and privacy online. And here, this is the other thing about the way our attitudes seem to change when we think about the internet. We seem to sort of underappreciate the security dimension of it. Perhaps we think that because it's a virtual world, there are virtual security threats with no real world consequences. Maybe that's what we think. All of us lock our doors at home and our cars, but not all of us would make sure that we have the latest antivirus software on our computers, that we change our passwords regularly, for example. Teenagers grow up following their parents' advice not to talk to strangers. But the average 18 to 24-year-old online now has 629 Facebook friends, most of which they've never even met physically, but have given them carte blanche to enter into their lives through this digital window, to follow them, to see who they're talking to on a daily basis. Why is that? I think legislators also maybe are following the same security paradigm. They haven't yet legislated the internet as a modern instrument of life in the same ways they've done other areas. Other instruments like air travel, international banking, for example, even mobile telephones, have been the product of democratic deliberation and security by design. So now we have legislation that allow police to intercept private telephone calls of suspects, compel banks to operate strong anti-money laundering controls over international banking systems, for example. And here in Europe, when Schengen Agreement was introduced in the 1990s to abolish internal border controls, what a wonderful opportunity that was for citizens and commerce. But at the same time, legislators made sure that they took certain measures to increase cross-border police cooperation, to make sure, therefore, that criminals and terrorists couldn't exploit those new freedoms when they were introduced. Where's that balance between privacy and security in the online environment? I don't see it. Of course, the development of the internet has been different. Its rapid organic growth in particular hasn't given much opportunity to introduce that regulatory control and balance. Of course, not that we should give up on that. We should still try to find that balance, but it's going to be a lot more difficult because of the global dimensions of the internet in particular, and how you can introduce some global areas of governance in something that has grown in an organic way to something today that we didn't perhaps plan for or even ask for, but it's something that we're actually left with. But it's the one part of our life in which there are far fewer security safeguards than any other part of our life. That's a fact now. Maybe legislation is the key, I'm not sure. Maybe we should try. But in the meantime, at least, let's make sure that there's a kind of public-private partnership that's at least as good, at least as well developed, as there is in those other areas that I mentioned, with telecommunication operators, with the banking sector, for example. There are some good signs. At the European Cybercrime Centre in Europol, we have established some very effective relationships with the major tech firms. They're working very hard to help us. They're also helping us develop new proposals to identify and take down terrorist content online. These are very good, but at the same time, we know that the latest innovations in encryption, in particular by industry, are making the job for police even harder to identify and to track the offenders. I don't think that they're doing that deliberately, of course, to make the police job even harder. Of course not. But at the same time, I get the sense that we're not really on the same page, the police and the industry. It's led some in my sector, for example, to argue for the introduction of a backdoor for encryption, so that specialist government agencies can have the right to break certain encryption at a certain time. But clearly, if you do that, the deliberate engineering of security vulnerabilities in our digital systems obviously has some major downsides as well. And of course, it's a principle that is implacably opposed by most in the tech sector. And that in particular, I think, illustrates the fact that there has been a serious decline in trust between governments and industry, especially following the allegations made by Edward Snowden. We need to repair that trust. And at Europol, I'm convinced that we will play a part in doing that in the most proactive way, that we can work with industry, at least on a voluntary basis, to make things much, much better between us. Because I know that the digital age has changed our lives, but police are still in the same business of preventing crime, tracking offenders, and getting the necessary evidence by which to convict them. It's just that the information for us to do that now is largely in the hands of private companies running online services. We need access to that information in a reasonable way. To do that, we need to build their trust, repair their trust, so that together, therefore, I think industry and law enforcement leading the way can make sure that all of us can enjoy both a free and a safe internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's very rarely that I get to stand next to someone who's slightly taller than myself. So I don't want to be Jennifer Lawrence. And you mentioned you're doing partnerships with industry and with business. What can I, as Sean, do to make sure that the nude pics my girlfriend sent me last night won't get hacked by criminals on the internet?
Well, of course, the part of this is about making sure all of us follow certain minimum standards of digital hygiene to make sure that, of course, as I said, that we have passwords properly used, that are complex passwords, of course, and that we are storing the most precious personal data in the best possible way. I'm not going to criticize Jennifer Lawrence or anyone else for what they did. In that case, the fault lies entirely on the hackers involved. But I would encourage everyone, of course, and particularly those that work in the most vulnerable communities of commerce especially, to sit up and take notice. The information security these days is no longer the preserve of just some techies. It's actually a frontline issue because of the reputational damage and the financial damage to global financial companies, for example, and other industries. This is a number one issue for corporate governments at the moment, and I think for members of the public as well. We need to understand the way we live our virtual life has real world consequences as well, and we need to take care of that in a very careful way.
To open up to the audience, I wouldn't want to miss up the chance to talk to the director of Europol, speaking about an issue that affects me so personally. So do we have a question from the audience directly to Rob? And I'd like to remind, while you guys are thinking of your questions, the audience watching us on the live stream, you can also get your question asked directly to the speakers by tweeting at HagueTalks with the hashtag. Any questions for Rob?
Down at the front.
We have one here.
I wonder if you have an answer to this one. Have you seen the documentary The United States of Secrets?
No.
No. Anyways, there was talk of a program which was designed before the actual NSA program where all the debate is about, which is called Thin Thread. And that security or that data mining program designed by the NSA supposedly had a lock, or how you say that, an encryption on all the privacy data. So that way the trias politica, so to speak, was how you said, was safe because they could see where criminal activity was going on, but they could not actually see who it was and where it was from. So they would first need to go to the Justice Department and ask, and motivate to get the encryption off. Is that something you are aware of? Is that possible? Is that something that's being looked at? Because if that could be reality, then you would have a good feeling about your privacy being secure, while on the other side, your kind of institutes have the means to see where criminal activity is going on.
I'm not aware of that particular functionality, but I think the point that you're making is that we depend on having the right kind of technical competence to safeguard everyone's lives through the internet, but in a way that doesn't have a disproportionate effect on people's privacy. There are other arrangements outside of the space of the internet, for example, that allows services including Europol to access private banking details to monitor terrorist financing across the world. This is potential access to large volume data, but in a very, very limited way, where there's been legislation to really safeguard the extent to which that could be used. And it works in practice, and I think we could do the same in this case. The issue, however, is also, as revealed by Snowden, one, I think, of public accountability for the services that access this data. And I think that's a really important part of the way in which we need to learn and evolve as a law enforcement community in the future. My final remark is to say this. I'm not standing here today to defend the actions of the intelligence service. They can do that on their own. I'm here representing the police community. As I said in my speech, what's really, really important to understand is that the police are in the business of stopping crime happening and apprehending criminals afterwards. And for that, we just need evidence. It's just that the relative importance of digital evidence these days is much, much greater than at any time in the past. So we need a digital platform, therefore, to make sure that we can still arrest and convict people who wish to do us harm.
Just to quickly follow up on that, one last question before you leave the stage. We got a question from Eve via Twitter, and she asks, do you feel that the law enforcement agencies in the EU take cybercrimes against individuals seriously?
I think across the EU, maybe even across the world, I think the technological capability of police everywhere is not high enough. And I think also the resources devoted needs to improve as well. We're in a race as well. We need to learn from industry in particular to improve our skills of digital investigation. And for that, I think our resources are really stretched and our priorities are stretched. And sometimes that means we don't look after individuals in individual cases like that in the way that we should. We have to prioritize. And at the moment at Europol, we're prioritizing, for example, the very large networks that are operating online to exchange child sexual abuse material. I'm afraid at levels that you would barely comprehend, but also protecting our financial institutions and other authorities from large-scale cyber attacks. These at the moment are our priorities with the limited resources that we have. But in answer to that question, I think we can do a lot more. Absolutely, Sean.
And we may have time for one last question from Morten Dragney. He asks, do you think the decline we see in crime throughout Europe is because of displacement to the internet? I don't know where the decline in figures comes from, but...
Well, I hinted at it in my speech, and I think it's a very good point that Morten makes. That there are some signs in some countries of a decline in criminal activity, at least in a number of arrests. There's definitely been a displacement of at least some of that online, absolutely. To what extent is very difficult to measure, because it's even hard for us to measure the scale of cybercrime online. We don't know because of some of the fundamental issues we have about detecting this crime in the first place and attributing it to an offender. I think there's some displacement. I think what we're seeing is a very important strategic shift in the way in which crime operates in the world. And the internet is absolutely the engine for that. And that means we have to re-gear the whole way in which we do our work to safeguard our society, I think. And we're in that process right now.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rob. That's about as much time as we have. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for the director of Europol.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
I would like to remind everyone, if you would like to have your questions answered by some of the speakers, live tweet us at #HagueTalks. Follow us at HagueTalks on Twitter. And remember Vince's challenge. What would you do today to ensure an open and secure internet in 2025? Let's call it a history of the future. What would you do now to make sure the future is safe and secure for everyone? You get a chance to win a coffee date with one of the creators of the internet here in The Hague. And if you can't make it to The Hague, I'm glad to point out that a Dutch telephone company has offered us one black phone. This is the type of phone that will protect you from becoming Jennifer Lawrence. So if you want this phone, if you want to protect your privacy, it's primed for privacy. Tweet us at HagueTalks, and you might stand a chance to win this phone. On to our next speaker. She describes herself as a researcher, an advocate. She's a blogger. She does work regarding women's rights, social justice in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. She works with Radio Netherlands Worldwide on a program that's hosted on Google Hangouts, which deals with all these contemporary issues in Saudi Arabian society. And this has put her in the forefront in this battle to use the internet and cyberspace to pursue issues of social justice, peace, and security. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like for you to give a warm welcome to Hala Al-Dasari.
Thank you. So it was a day, a warm day like this one in Saudi Arabia in October 2013 when I met with my friend in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, outside her home. We have agreed that we would take her car, taking turns driving in her car and filming ourselves. And as I asked my friend, who should take the first turn, I sensed the air of anxiety and fear between us. So I volunteered to take the first turn driving the car. And as I was driving in Jeddah, I was overwhelmed by a sense of entitlement. It was very strange that this very small act of courage really inspired me and made me feel a sense of belonging to my country. I was born there, but this little act of driving through my country, this gave me this sense of control. It was very difficult to describe, but then I tried to upload the video online, and I tried to show it to my followers as well. And this was not happening in any country. This is in Saudi Arabia, where women are not allowed to drive. And this is the video that we shot on that day. You see, they've received a lot of attention after this video. And the thing is, we felt that this kind of fear and this kind of anxiety is very much justified at the beginning, because the women who dared to challenge the imposed driving ban before have been subjected to several kinds of legal intimidation. And the worst one of them is the police calling their guardians. Now, every woman in Saudi Arabia is supposed to be responsible, is to be basically not responsible, but to get the permission of her guardian in order to pursue anything in life. So I had a chat with my father. A guardian is actually a male guardian, a male person in your family who is supposed to represent you in the government and in the state. So I had a chat with my father before going with my friend on a ride, and I asked him that I should take the car. And of course, he had a very reserved attitudes towards engaging in this. So I told him I'm going with my friend anyway. And we agreed that if he is being called by the authority at any time, he would just tell them that he did not approve. And I went away and did it anyway. Most of the time, I live in my mind. It's a very safe place where the restrictions and limitations of reality does not exist. But again, the mind can be a very dangerous place if it has an online access. More and more Saudis are actually turning into virtual citizens because of the limitations imposed on them in reality. And the question that we all share, is it safe for us to share our minds online? The cyberspace in Saudi Arabia is more or less an occupied territory. It is turning into a hunting ground. More and more activists, more and more physicians, lawyers, everyday citizens who hold controversial opinions are being targeted by the authorities. And the one thing that we always feel wary of, the arbitrary nature of, or the unpredicted nature of those arrests. I woke up one day, several days ago, on a text message from my friend. She was telling me that Saudi Arabia airplanes are striking Yemen. And I tried to look for answers for that. I tried looking online, I tried seeing what's going on. Why did we decide to go and strike Yemen? And one of the things that strike me is the negative atmosphere. The online atmosphere was poisonous. A lot of sectarian violence, a lot of hate speech going on to promote the aggression and the war. So I posted an online question. I asked what were our goals from attacking Yemen? And though I didn't take any position against the war, I didn't declare any position, I received a lot of aggressive replies. One of them is from a follower who holds the royal family name. And he said, threatening me, watch it. There is a law by the Minister of Interior that would strip anyone from his nationality if he shows sympathy with Iranian or the Houthis that we are targeting. I felt powerless for a moment, but then I took the discussion to a different level. Who has the right to strip someone from the nationality? Are they members of the royal family? Is the Minister of Interior entitled to strip me from my nationality? So I posted the question again, and the answer was yes. There were people in Saudi Arabia who held opposition, who held controversial opinions, and their nationality were stripped. So it's not always this way. Sometimes there is a profound moment of power that really impact our experience online. As the time where I tweeted the proceedings of a session in a Human Rights Council during the Universal Periodic Review of Saudi Arabia. I have submitted, with a contribution from another activist, a report called Unfulfilled Promises that document the discrimination against women in Saudi Arabia in preparation for that session. And I have agreed with a number of activists to tweet online the proceedings of the session, translating it into Arabic and trying as much as possible to engage all the people online to take part in that session. So what happened while I was actively transcribing and translating the proceedings is I realized the massive outreach of the report. It's not only those people online who are getting the information that was kept hidden for a very long time and the international community. It's actually me sitting across the table from my government. The 5 pages report is actually submitted by me and in a way it's actually presented by international community, but it's me who is presenting those recommendations, who's presenting those comments to my delegates, to my Saudi delegate. And that virtual position online would never have happened in reality. There are other good moments as well, like the program we present with Radio Netherlands, the Google Hangout. We managed to create a platform for Saudi people to sit together from different walks of life and to discuss an issue of concern using online means. And the one condition that we provided, and the one thing that we provided that was not there for any other programs, is that there is no limits for the freedom of expression. They can just discuss anything, they can say anything, and there was no problems attached to any opinions. So if I ask the question again, is it safe for us to share our minds online? Of course, the answer is no. There is unpredicted risk associated with that. We would never know who the government or the authorities would decide to target for that matter. You see, I have come to realize that opinions is one of the most dangerous things to hold, especially in my government. The government has a monopoly over opinions of the people through the education, through the media, even through religious beliefs. And they think of opinion as an act of terror. In fact, it is defined in law as an act of terror. There are a number of people who are being tried because they have tried to incite public opinion, tried to move the opinion into a different position. And they are being tried in a court of terror. But I do believe that we should keep on sharing our minds. We should keep on doing it, despite the risk attached to it, because that would be the only way for us to reach a society that we all strive for. Thank you.
Another warm round of applause for Hala, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. There we go. Thank you so much, Hala, for your for giving us this insight into what it's like working as an activist in a country that lacks freedom. I'm from Zimbabwe myself, and there is an activist who has been missing for 37 days today. Bring back Itai Dzamara. He's a journalist, a fellow journalist. And I'm sure there are a lot of journalists in the audience who will have questions regarding what you just spoke about. I'd like to ask first, you did mention it a bit, but maybe you could extend a little further. Do you feel for people that are living in Saudi Arabia right now, that have access to the internet, do they have, is it a question of having freedom of speech, or is it a question of having freedom after speech? Can people talk and then they self-censor, or is it people just cannot talk online?
Well, I sense that both things exist. People learn quickly when they get examples from other people being targeted for their opinions to self-censor themselves. So there is more and more, the more aggression there is from the authority towards people who are freely speaking online, the more people who are intimidated and who stops actually using the online platform, but more or less going to different types of application, close the groups to express their opinions.
I would like to open to the audience. Thank you so much, Hala. Does somebody from the audience have a specific question for Hala? I know there are a lot of activists, maybe journalists, and people interested in cyberspace here today. Those of you at home, live tweet your question to us. Questions?
Thank you so much for your very interesting presentation or speech. My question is about what you mentioned. Actually, it combines 2 points you mentioned. One is that opinion is the most dangerous thing to hold. I completely agree with you. Perhaps it's better not to have any opinion to live peacefully. But most of us choose to have opinions and take the risk to be targeted, right? The second is there are laws that tell you that to have an opinion, a certain opinion, is to make yourself illegal, right? So the acts you are conducting online or offline are illegal. So my question then is, how do you combine those two, to have an opinion and accept to be illegal? Because anyway, we are all supposed to follow the laws, and those laws prevent you from thinking, from having an opinion. So my question would be, is it not perhaps safer to start fighting those laws first before having any opinion, so that our opinions can be legal? Because anything illegal, wherever you go in the world, in this world, you will be considered illegal. So I think perhaps the shift should be to start with fighting those laws so that our opinions can be legal.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there is a clear distinction. This is more of a fluid place in Saudi Arabia. Who makes the law? Who decides that such an action is illegitimate? You, as I said, you would never know once posting an opinion. I would never know. I would never know when I ask about the aims of the war in Yemen. I would never know what would make this opinion, illegitimate. And this is not an opinion. This is a question. I didn't know that there is actually a law that people can be stripped of their nationality if they opposes a policy or opposes an opinion of the state. So who makes the law? This is an absolute monarchy. People are not part of making the law, and you don't have the setup in the country where people can be engaged in challenging a law. So this is a completely different thing. So I think people should fight first and foremost for their freedom to express their opinion and to fight against the government being criminalizing their acts and their use of that type of freedom, because that's the only thing that would protect people in such an environment, because you don't have power over anything. You don't have power over the law, how it's made, how it's interpreted, and how it's executed.
Very unique situation in Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
this being a monarchy and I suppose a theocracy.
Everything within the hand of the king. So definitely you will never be able to influence the law. You would never be able to.
Okay, I hope that clarifies a bit. Do we have another question from the audience? There we go.
Thank you. Maybe also a remark following this question. Of course, Saudi Arabia is very unique in the sense how the political situation is, but talking about laws, about freedom of expression, and that we should fight them because we know that some expressions are illegal, some opinions are illegal. I think it is much more complicated, really, as you said, because simply, for example, I grew up in the communist country, and in fact, the legislations about freedom of expressions, basically, there were possible having an expression and to say something, but really it was very blurry. There was something like a subversion of state or something like that. So it was never ever easy to say that if I will say this or that, it will be illegal in the eyes of authorities. So I think that this is really, as you mentioned, first of all about freedom of expression, and maybe less about how because authoritarian states in every forms, they will find a way how to target you, even if you say hello.
Exactly.
basically. So this is just a remark. But maybe one question specifically, Kevi, about the video, if I may ask, about the issue of Saudi Arabian women driving. So how is the situation now, if I may ask?
Not changed.
Nothing.
And this is another thing. If we
because
challenge the law, there is no law, by the way, that really prohibits women from driving. There is an initiative by the Minister of Interior. He decided many years ago, 2 decades ago actually, that because of group of women have taken to the streets to demand that right, that they should never be allowed to drive. So whenever one of the officials, one of the members of the royal family would be asked in the media, why do you enforce this driving ban? They would say it's a societal issue. So the main aim of the whole October 26th campaign is to show the society, the world, that women don't have any problems with that, actually going to the street and driving. So I think we have diffused this kind of claim that it's the societal problem that women don't want to drive. Women have shown actually shown on video, have been taking clips of themselves in photos driving. So I don't think you can challenge the law by just trying to break it. It's as I said in the story, there is a very big empowerment that happens when you actually do what you believe. And when you actually expand like when I went to drive, we could talk about driving, that the law is bad and the driving ban should be removed. But when you actually go and drive yourself, this is a completely different power zone. You feel like you are actually owning the act, that you are actually doing something more different. And there is another thing as well, the problem of being afraid of saying something or being afraid of posting an opinion. I can understand that if it's happening on one or two individuals, but if it's too many people are engaged, we should really seize the opportunity of the internet to expand this concept that people should keep on talking, because yes, the state can control 100, 1,000, 10,000, but can they control 100,000 people stating an opinion? So the power is in number. So people should be encouraged to express more and more to fight this kind of restrictions that is only controlled by fear.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from the audience? We might have time for one last question. If not, I'll ask you one last thing, Hala, before you leave. Do you feel that being visible online and being on the internet and having people follow you on your blogs and on your Twitter timeline, does this make you safer?
I don't think about safety much because, as I said, the situation is very much unpredictable. I don't know, I do the same things as another activist, but she's being interrogated. So I'm not sure about being safe. It's more of a being true to what you believe in, more than being safe. So if you keep on thinking about safety and not about the goal at hand, about making people see what you see, transferring your mind basically online, giving people something to look for, and instead of just warning people that they will be attacked and targeted, we will never change, and we're not going to be ever safe. We're not going to be ever safe if we kept silent. Actually, things would be completely the opposite.
I don't think we can find a much more eloquent description of conviction. Thank you very much, Hala. I'll take a quick moment to remind our audience, both at home and here, that you can ask questions of the speakers using our hashtag HagueTalks. Follow us on Twitter at HagueTalks. And remember to answer Vint Cerf's challenge. What would you do now to ensure an open and secure internet 10 years from now in 2025? Our next speaker, from closer to home, my sister. She's a development consultant and advisor from Nigeria. She's the co-founder of the Free Software and Open Source Foundation for Africa. My God, her retinue, it's extensive, but I'll just mention that she sits on the board for the Open Source Initiative. She's the vice president of the Digital Solidarity Fund and is currently the Africa Regional Coordinator for the World Wide Web Foundation. She said I shouldn't try to pronounce her surname, though I can say Kuma Uqetu Geca Uqetu, but we'll try that after you're done speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Nena.
Hello there. My name is Nena, and I come from the internet. Everyone knows that. I come from Africa, so you're speaking with an internet citizen from Africa. I'll be very short. I just came to tell stories. 2 weeks ago, we finished making a film. The film was about the problems we have with the internet. The film was shot in Burkina Faso and partly in Cote d'Ivoire. So it's a whiner's film, right? Oh, we don't have internet. Oh, the internet is very slow. Now, the film itself, the AVI version of it is 3.5 gig. You can't upload that. We said, okay, let's make an MP4. It was 289 megabytes, 289 MB. So we have to upload that to YouTube, right? You can't just whine and not whine online. So the filmmaker is trying to upload this film to the internet, and it's not going. She travels from Cote d'Ivoire to Ghana and says, okay, it will be done before Friday, the Easter weekend. But in Ghana, you don't have electricity every day. And so it goes and goes, and in the middle of the day, the electricity goes out. She says, okay, let's try it again tomorrow. And tomorrow it goes out for the whole day. And the next, anyway, the film does not get uploaded in Ghana, and it comes back to Cote d'Ivoire. And then she starts uploading it again. She says, okay, it's now at 75%. She had started since midday. It was 6 p.m. in Abidjan. And we says, okay, let's go and have dinner. So by the time we come back, we'll see upload completed. So we start having dinner and the light goes off at 90%, and we sit and we cry over dinner. We had tears for dinner because we can't upload 289 megabytes. And so I said, I'm going to give it another shot on a Sunday. This time around, many people would have been off the network and will have a better bandwidth. It took 7 hours to upload 289 megabytes of a Winer's film. Good evening again. This is where I come from. So I'm talking about the nightmares and the things that really frustrate people. And you see it online every day. They say the internet is slow in Africa. You can't get things done. You can't do this and you can. And that is really true. That is the story we live with every day. So when you are sitting at The Hague and you putting stuff for me on Dropbox and you're telling me to upload and download, you are insulting me. Because I want to, but I can't. And that is one of my nightmares. Actually, when I uploaded that video from my house for 7 hours, I was actually paying $60 for something that is supposed to be 1 megabyte per second speed. But when I was uploading, it was uploading at 32 kilobytes per second. But I am being charged for 1 megabyte per second of uplink and downlink. So the thing is, am I getting the value for what I'm paying for in Africa in terms of affordability of the internet? And the answer is no, I don't. Now, the one that is really frustrating is, can I complain about it? You pay $100 for 1 megabyte per second. You're getting about 300, 400. You can't watch a video. It goes buffering all the time. Can you complain about it? The answer in many countries in Africa is no. Nobody will listen to you. And there isn't, in many cases, an instance where you can go and say, I have a problem with my internet provider and I want it to be sorted out. So quality of service for internet users in Africa, it's not something we can even complain about because there is nobody there to listen to me. Now, that is home. The even bad one, people like Rob who are here, who track illegal activities online, have also blacklisted me. So even the small internet I get, I can't even do PayPal on it because I'm told that, oh, most of my activities are shady. And so what have I done to merit this kind of life? I put in a lot of money. I get bad internet access, but I still hold on, and then the international community is telling me my activities are not nice enough to invest in me. I don't have PayPal in many African countries because I'm told they are not very comfortable. My internet provider will not trust me. My government will not trust me. And the global internet community will not trust me. And these are the causes of the nightmares for African internet users. Where shall we go from here? Will we say, okay, let's drop it. Let's not worry about it. No, that's why people like me will come here and say, I have a dream. I don't have bandwidth, that is correct. I don't have electricity, that is correct. But I have a dream. I have a dream that with the internet, I can do one or two things. I've asked them to put up an image over there. It's an image of a bridge, an old bridge, taken from one of the nice African countries. The internet for us is like a bridge. It connects peoples, it connects cultures, it connects genders, it connects people from all across the world. It connects one civilization to the other. That is the role of the internet. But if you don't have a bridge that allows you to cross, then you may need to use a rope. And there will be one set of people at one end and another set of people at the other end. And you have to climb that rope to get across. It is true that many Africans are using ropes as a bridge on the digital divide, but we will get there. So, can I still have a dream? Do you think I can share a dream? Is it possible to dream along with me? Okay, here is my dream. Not just for 2025, as Vincent is asking for. I want my dreams to come along today. I want to have a broadband-filled Africa, a place where you can click and it can go. You know, when I take a picture here at The Hague, by the time I step out of the window, the picture has been shared with my other devices. That is so cool, and that is a dream I have for Africa. This morning I asked people that question, what is your dream? And someone said, mine is very easy, 5 megabytes per second. People already have it. People had that for dinner yesterday. But in Africa, that is someone's dream. Can that dream come true? Yes, it can. What are we dreaming of? We're dreaming of internet that we can afford. In some places in Africa, to get a 512K per second, you actually need to pay up to 5 months the average salary. So people can't do it. What are we dreaming of? We're dreaming of internet that allows us to connect to the world. We're dreaming of internet that allows us to do business like every other person. We're dreaming of an internet capacity that will allow us to go to school to do online training. We're dreaming of an internet that allows us to build bridges across cultures, across people. So if you get away from here, you want to dream along with me. One of the things we do at the Web Foundation is called the Alliance for Affordable Internet. We're bringing in partners, we're bringing in governments, we're bringing in industry to bring down the causes of these nightmares so that dreams and dreams and dreams can come through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nena.
Welcome,
Okay,
sir.
so can I try and pronounce your surname?
Give it a shot.
Okay.
Trouble.
Let me take a breath. Nwakanma.
That's good.
There we go. First question for you,
All
Nena.
of that are questions.
Yes.
Oh, I plead
We've
guilty.
got a whole dossier. So, you yourself are from Nigeria. And Eve asks, what do you think about, Eve on Twitter asks, what do you think about the World Wide Web's role in terrorist recruitment in Africa?
In recruiting terrorists.
In recruiting terrorists?
We don't recruit terrorists at the Web Foundation. We work for social justice. If there is anything we would never do, never, ever do, it is to encourage something illegal. Never, never. It does not go with social justice.
There's a question that comes from my own experience. When I was studying at Maastricht University here in the Netherlands, I would have friends and family ask me to get them journal articles because I had access to JSTOR and all these other web databases. Are you guys doing work to solve that problem?
Okay, I had one other thing I want to talk about, and maybe this may be shocking to you. People in West Africa, let me remain there, don't have credit cards. So when you go to a place and they said you need to put in your credit card numbers, it doesn't work. It's an insult to many of us because banks do not issue credit cards in West Africa. They issue debit cards. So in most cases, if something has to be purchased online, not many of us can do that. And that is why you've heard about mobile money. That's where you've heard about M-Pesa. So it is because we have these international issues that necessity has become the seed for innovation in many areas in Africa. So we still have those problems where Bitcoin, people are here manifesting for Bitcoin a lot. We don't even have cards, okay? So it's coming up, but it's not yet there. But like I said, let's dream together. Let's wake up and work for those dreams, and we will get there.
Do we have a question from the audience? Any question from the audience? We have one question.
Why me again? Okay, the question is, I think it's a very nice dream you have, about the internet in Africa and fast internet and affordable internet. On the other hand, do you see also some, I would say, some problems with the fact that you will have, let's say you will have it, and we have had a director of Europol here, and he mentioned a couple of problems with the cyber society we have. It means you have internet, and if this even faster, then probably the cybercrime may be more widespread and so on. So do you see also some, so what are the pros and what are the cons for you having a very much connected society?
I think that question goes to everyone, but let me give you a very funny answer. Who would ever stop building a road because of the possibility of accidents? Don't build a road here because if you build a road, there will be cars and there are going to be accidents. No, because the opportunities that development brings far outweighs the issues. So I still believe that the opportunities that come with broadband internet access far outweigh the other, the negative side of it. I always use this as an illustration. Every woman has a knife in the kitchen. Is there someone who's got a kitchen that does not have a knife? I don't know any kitchen that doesn't have a knife, but I don't know many women who wake up in the morning, pick up their kitchen knives, and start stabbing each member of their families. No. So a kitchen knife in the kitchen will not be an arm. It is in the head that crime begins. It's in the spirit of human beings that crime begins, and that is where crime needs to be combated. And for Africa, some people are actually being led into crimes by these, what do they call them? Military democracy?
Military democracy? Yeah. To follow up, Eve just sent another tweet.
Eve, I'm going to follow you when I get down from here.
She says, she meant, what's your perspective on terrorist organizations using the internet to recruit young Africans?
Using the World Wide Web.
The World Wide Web.
Not the Web Foundation, okay? The Web Foundation was founded by Tim Berners-Lee. It's a foundation whose aim is to make sure that the internet serves for social justice. Now, the World Wide Web, that's all of us interacting with each other. My view, like I said, is still the same. The internet is a tool. It's a neutral network, and it is human beings who create content. The interactivity online is powered by human beings. Even when they are powered by machines, they are human beings behind the machine. Let me say this as a human rights activist. Have we asked why people take up terrorist activities? Why? Maybe if we understand the why, we can begin to tackle these problems. There are quite a lot of social injustices going on, and if we do not face those ones, we may not be able to combat terrorism. It is easier to fight against the wrong, but it is harder to stand for the right. Let's stand for what is right. That brings down what is wrong. That's what I believe in.
A strong message there. We have one other question. Yes. There we go.
Thank you very much. My question is in relation to your views concerning the state or governments and their relationships with telecommunications companies in Africa. Mm-hmm. Your slow connection may not have been caused so much by the fact that the internet is actually slow, but because there is no regulation of the service delivery of the private company, or alternatively, the state ignores such issues anyway. Do you think there's some complicit relationship between private and states in terms of not delivering the sort of connection you want in Africa?
Okay, the term connection is generally used, okay? There is capacity and there is propensity. Let me take that again. We work as the Alliance for Affordable Internet. When a company says, I'm rolling out services, in the internet world, it goes from a bigger chunk of internet that is being distributed. It's like you get a chunk of water and then you distribute through pipes and all of that, okay? So when a company says, I'm a telco, I'm a telecommunications company, I'm an internet services provider, there is traffic in and out, and there is infrastructure that takes the services around. So it's not just about the capacity of the internet, how many gigahertz we have landing as submarine cable. There's a whole lot of investment that needs to take it from a landing point to an end point. That may be very technical for many people, but what I'm saying is the rollout of internet services, it's layered. It involves investment. And if the infrastructure is not there, it won't flow well. Sometimes you may have water, but then the pipes are leaking. That means that the one at the very end may not have enough water. Sometimes there'll be water, but the pressure is not good enough. So there are infrastructure issues in Africa, I must admit. And being that many African countries are sitting and saying, telecommunications and internet, that is where we'll tax. We're not investing, we're just taxing the services. That means that if there is 100 people in a village somewhere, I, as an industry person, I don't have any market value to go and invest thousands of dollars taking the internet to people who may not pay me enough. So I will not go there. What is happening is that in a place like Nigeria, I understand that 70% of main one clients come from only 3 cities, Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. So why will they have an incentive to dig pipes, pay taxes, pay right of way to take to the rural areas? So it's a give and take thing. It's not just regulation. There are taxation issues, there are investment issues, and there is a long-term sustainability plan issues.
Thank you very much, Nena. One last very quick question and a very quick answer, please.
What do you think about this internet.org initiative and also about net neutrality issue?
Net neutrality and?
Internet.org initiative.
Okay, internet.org. Some of you have heard of it. This is a plan by some global giants to say, we are going to give you limited internet. You just test it and you go away. I think we've made a video that we shared here. Here is my humble reply. If you go to a place where there's a drought and you give someone half a glass of water, you have not solved the problem, because it is something they need sustainably. So the internet I dream about as Nena is sustainable broadband internet. Tomorrow, I'll be speaking more at the opening ceremony about such initiatives. Some people say a little is better than nothing. But in terms of capacity building, in terms of human dignity, a glass of water does not feed a family. Anywhere, everywhere. Net neutrality, I've spoken about earlier on. Vincef is still alive. Tim Berners-Lee is still alive. These are people who worked to give us the internet and the web. Never in their minds were they upholding an architecture that will be closed or that will be preferential. And so we stand to uphold that the internet is a global common. One should not be greater than the other. There should be neutrality of networks. I'm so happy as a woman working in the tech industry that the computer reads zeros and ones. If it were to be reading male and female, tall and short, fat and slim, we would be in trouble by now. Let's keep the internet neutral. Let's keep it open. Let's keep it free. Am I free to go?
Yes, you are free to go. And follow your dream, Nena. Thank you. A great talk from my sister there, whose surname I could pronounce. I would like to remind those of you that are following the live stream that you can take part in the conversation. Follow us at HagueTalks, hashtag HagueTalks. Remember also to take part in Windsurf's competition. You could stand a chance to have a coffee with one of the creators of the internet. Come on, guys. And you could also win a black phone. That is a privacy-primed phone from a Dutch telephone company. Before we move on to our next speaker, I'd really like to read this tweet. This comes from Cindy, who says, so privileged to drive my own car freely in Holland. Thanks for sharing your story, Hala. Hala, thank you so much for your story. It's resonating. Our next speaker, he is in charge of Microsoft Trustworthy Computing. He leads the global security strategy and diplomacy team at Microsoft. That means his work pretty much has affected you one way or the other, because I suppose Microsoft is everywhere. His team works on the future of cybersecurity, cloud computing, and international relations in cyberspace. And prior to the work that he does now at Microsoft, he worked for 8.5 years with the United States government, including a stint as Director of Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Protection in the White House. So maybe you can tell us afterwards whether House of Cards gets it right. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Nicholas.
As we march toward the year 2025, brace yourselves. I think we are about to experience an unprecedented diffusion of cyber power, of cyber insecurity, and of opportunity. I'm not talking about a science room beaker where you watch little food coloring move around inside of a beaker. I'm talking about an unprecedented growth of internet connectivity, and I would say long overdue internet connectivity. This will allow a dissemination of ideas, of knowledge, and of capital further and faster than at any point in our history. And I believe that diffusion actually will challenge the entrenched and the established and start to create new opportunities for more inclusive governance as well as economic opportunity. I think that the diffusion of cyber power, insecurity, actually work together to create a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape the world we want to live in, the world you want to live in. So let's talk about what that looks like. If we go flip forward here, I want to show you a picture of what the internet looked like in the year 2000. Not very big and not very reflective of the world. If you look at the internet today, it looks a whole lot closer to what we're looking at in terms of a geopolitical map. And you hear what Nina says here, if you look at Africa, the missing parts in terms of connectivity. But if we fast forward to the year 2025, 10 years from now, you're going to see a world that starts to look really different. This, my friends, I think is the beginning of diffusion. And I think we're going to witness some very interesting things in this space. First of all, look at just the amazing amount of people who come online in the global south. That, my friends, I think we'll see a lot of innovation. So let's talk about what this means. I believe that diffusion is really going to embolden new players, and we're going to witness this in three primary ways. The first one is personal power. That means you and me having access to software and services and devices and data to improve our daily lives, but also to create businesses and to bring about social change. The ability for us to arrest and redirect social movements to improve society is really exciting and fascinating, and I think is only going to get bigger. This, of course, makes governments nervous, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The second area I think we're going to see a shift in power is with the rise of the influence of cities. I think cities are going to wield more power in the future than they have since the ancient world. Today, the UN tells us that over 54% of the world lives in cities. We're about to add 1 billion more people to urban environments in the next 10 years or more. The three top countries, 37% of the people in the world are going to live in cities. excuse me, 37% of the world's city dwellers are going to live in China, India, and Nigeria. We're going to see the rise of megacities, over 40 megacities with 10 million or more people in them. Cities will be making decisions that once were in the realm of nation states about security, about safety, about public health, and about cyber. And the decisions they make there are going to increase their capital within their countries and on the international level to go and deal with changes, whether it's climate changes or social justice changes or other things. So really exciting. The third area is what I call the rise of multi-stakeholder governance. Governments really struggle with hard problems. Madeleine Albright once said, people talk to their governments about 21st century problems, and they do it on 20th century technology, and governments reply with 19th century policies. Hashtag, are you surprised? This is not sustainable. You know, governments, whether they're big democracies or whether they're authoritarian regimes, are finding they're having to work with multiple people, with the public sector, with the private sector, with NGOs. And I think this is a trend that is going to continue into the future, and I'm very excited about what that brings. But the shift in power also brings shifts in insecurity. And I want to talk about three of those. And these are rather sobering, and I think we need to keep our eye on them. The first one is what I would call surveillance societies. So you living in a mega city with 10 million plus people, you're going to want to have cameras and sensors and devices to help you understand how that city flows. We need to be really careful about what this means for privacy, for personal freedoms, and security. And the same personal power that we're getting from social media and increased connectivity also creates an opportunity for governments to surveil us. And we have to make sure that that does not erode personal freedoms. What is that balance? You heard the director of Europol earlier talk about the need for increasing capabilities in law enforcement. How do we keep that balance? The second area is something I call cybersecurity norms. Today, there are about 40 countries in the world that have a declared military policy for using cyberspace. And there are 17 governments that have been outed or have admitted that they have offensive capabilities in cyberspace. What does that mean? That's our cyberspace, that world that connects us and gives us all that freedom. That is very fragile, and we've got to be careful about what the unintended consequences of there are. Today, governments like to get together and talk a little bit about establishing rules of the road, but that's really one military talking to another military, and you and I are not in the room. We think that needs to change, and that should change quickly. The private sector and NGOs and citizens should have a much broader view of how cyberspace should be used in the future. We live in an internet-dependent world and an internet-dependent economy, and we should not allow that to become a playground for national security issues. The third area I think is interesting is emerging technologies. There are cool technologies, but they scare people. Things like machine learning and Internet of Things and advanced artificial intelligence. These things will be disruptive. They will tear down old businesses and recreate new ones, and they will do it fast. And we as a society, I think, have to be ready to transition people, ready to equip people, ready to think about the future when those things start to happen. We can't allow ourselves to be drawn into sort of a regulatory shutdown where we keep scoping down innovation, because it will kill off the future of diffusion. I think at the end of the day, the opportunities for diffusion are really vast. I think about economic inclusion and growth. It's projected that we may have about 1 billion or more people exit poverty and start to move toward the middle class in the coming decades. That to me is phenomenal. Not just for inclusion of wealth, but the things that come with it: better health, better education, better opportunity. You think about what's in the global south and the world that Nina was just talking about. As you start to connect that and you find new business models, new innovation, new things are coming as people come online. Very excited about the world that that brings. I talked earlier about surveillance, but I think we also, you and I, have a responsibility in terms of transparency and accountability. We as individuals can apply that personal power to use open data, to use public data, to use social media to bring about change, whether it's a democracy or a despot. We can affect change by holding governments more accountable and businesses more accountable for what that world looks like. The third area, I think, is really things that haven't been invented yet in terms of environmental technologies that could help us better manage the resources of this planet, whether that's water, whether that's energy, whether that's other types of issues that we're starting to feel from climate change. There is a whole new world coming, and I would say most of that technology hasn't even been invented yet. So very excited about what that means. As we continue to think about diffusion and what the next 10 years are going to bring to us, I would encourage you to really think about three things. The growth in technology and connectivity will either divide us, meaning that we'll sort of fragment into very sort of isolated political or nationalistic views of the world, and this can be disruptive to the internet and things that Vint talked about at the very beginning that we do not want to see happen. It will imprison us, meaning we'll allow this sort of nature of surveillance and this clash of regulation to start to choke off innovation. That's a bad thing. Or it will improve us. And we will leverage the opportunity of connectivity, of collaboration, of coordination at an unprecedented scale to tackle fundamental problems facing our world today. I think that's where the future lies, and that's where I think diffusion really holds a huge opportunity for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'd like to ask a first question. Yesterday, during an event, Don Podesta, who just wrote a very interesting piece on surveillance of journalists, mentioned that when you have organizations, private organizations collaborating with the government, particularly such organizations as Facebook or Google that have these huge banks of data, it may not necessarily be the most positive development because these are like these honeypots of information that people can access. You just mentioned that we want to see more collaboration, more cooperation with state and non-state actors. Where do you stand on that spectrum? Is more cooperation good, or should we move for private institutions that are separate from state powers?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, a great question. I spend a lot of my time working on things like cybersecurity and critical infrastructure with governments around the world. You cannot solve those problems in the private sector alone, and you can't solve them in the government alone. What you do need is a very clear framework for, if we're going to work on a problem related to risk management, here's the ground rules. If you're going to work on solving, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of discussion sometimes around something called information sharing. Information sharing is a very targeted exchange of data that is often involved, when you talk about it in the terms of cybersecurity, is related to malware. How does this malware operate? Where did it come from? It is not about people. And I think sometimes being clear about what that is, as you get into other types of things where you're looking at surveillance and law enforcement data, that you need to be very clear about. There's a big effort from industry to try to reform government surveillance globally. There's a lot of efforts in the US and other places to really draw those lines much clearer. And I think we're at the very beginning of that phase at this point.
Thank you. We have a question from Twitter. Tobias asks, what role will Microsoft play in the Internet of the future?
Well, I think
very specific question.
I think one of the major roles we'll play is actually the provision of something called cloud computing services. This is something you see a huge shift in Microsoft from a company that used to make products that you used to run on your desktop to the provisioning of massive amounts of cloud computing services and storage that allow somebody to basically start a data center, start a business, and you don't have to buy servers and racks of equipment. So it allows that sort of speed to market much, much faster.
So everything goes into the cloud.
That's the dream.
Okay. Do we have a question from the audience for Paul? I see.
Thank you. Are we all going to be the same if we're all going to be living in cities? How does that affect cultural practices and issues to do with copyright that are already existent vis-a-vis movies and other programs. But are we essentially all going to be very similar?
Wow. So I'm not sure if I have an answer for that. I hope not. I think the growth of cities should not get rid of our cultural differences. I think it should promote better communication and collaboration amongst us. But I think that's one of the things that people struggle with. When you start to urbanize rapidly, sometimes communities will segregate themselves from each other as opposed to collaborating and connecting. And I think the opportunity for cities in the future is how do you deal with that? How do you bring cities together more cohesively? There's a lot of work going on to build resilient cities right now, and this is a concept where cities are able to take diverse communities, deal with things like affordable housing, earthquake readiness, as well as cyber shocks and environmental changes, and how do you build a community around that? But in answer to your question, I hope no. I hope we don't all become the same.
Okay, unfortunately, we are running at the tail end of our time. Thank you so much, Paul, and I hope maybe you can continue the conversation on Twitter or Facebook if you are online. The audience also knows where to find us at HagueTalks, #HagueTalks. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
So, what an interesting 1.5 hours. I think there was quite a lot to take in. And we hope that this conversation takes place further online. Continue to follow us. And remember, you still stand a chance to win a black phone. Yeah, black like me. And you also get to win a coffee with Vint Cerf if he chooses your tweet for what we should do now to ensure an open and secure internet in 2025. So it's still open, continue to tweet. And on the 24th of April, we have another talk lined up, which is on women, peace, and security at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. This is from 4 till 6. On the 24th of April, another amazing lineup of speakers, including, no less, a Nobel Prize winner, Jody Williams. So sign up right now, and I hope I see you next time. Thank you.